Stoicism is accessible to all people, regardless of their social class, financial status, skin color, choice of sexuality or level of intelligence. Proof of this is that Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, lived as a slave for more than 30 years before gaining his freedom. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor belonging to one of the richest families in Rome, also practiced Stoicism in his life, seeking virtue and self-control. Both faced addictions, freeing themselves from lust, greed, lack of control and anxiety. They disciplined their minds to deal with fears and worries within their control, learning to accept and be indifferent to things outside their control, such as the weather the next day. They could not control the actions of others, even if they were close people, family members, or within their homes. The society around them, judgments and opinions of others about them were beyond their control. The only thing that was under their control was their own will, intentions, and actions. Stoicism teaches us to act correctly regardless of circumstances, to take full moral responsibility for our actions, and to discipline and train our feelings. Marcus Aurelius exemplifies how Stoicism can guide the fight against vices and the path of virtue. The text highlights the importance of deeply exploring the context and wisdom of Stoicism to face addictions. The author asks the reader to reflect on their own addictions, asking them to comment on what their addiction is and the date on which they are watching the video. The declaration of commitment to transformation is seen as a courageous step to break any addiction that may affect the viewer's life. It ends by encouraging true commitment to transformation, highlighting that those who do not transmit light create their own darkness. Marcus Aurelius was emperor from 161 AD to 180 AD, during 19 years in which he held absolute power over the world. During this period, he could indulge in all his vices, follies and impulses, something considered common and acceptable for previous emperors. He had the ability to appropriate all the money in the world for his personal fortune, have sex at any time and anywhere, enjoy luxury and ostentation with the best clothes and food in the world. His authority was sovereign, and his word was law. Marcus Aurelius had the power to take revenge, punish and even kill any inhabitant of Rome without suffering consequences. You could get drunk daily with the best drinks, without restrictions. Despite the absolute power that Marcus Aurelius possessed, his life was an example of how it is possible to resist temptations and deal with life's difficulties and circumstances without giving in to vices. He did not succumb to the desire for immediate satisfaction, nor to the momentary pleasures offered by addictions, nor to the impulses that motivated them. The lesson that Marco Aurelio teaches us is that the ability to resist can be cultivated and become a positive habit in our lives. For the Stoics, any virtue accessible to a human being is accessible to everyone. In other words, if Marcus Aurelius was able to resist all the temptations that power provided him, we, who clearly have much less power in our lives, can too. We all possess a rational nature that allows us to control our feelings, behavior, actions and relationships with others. Marco Aurelio disciplined himself for 19 years, recording his reflections in a diary later published as Meditators. In this diary, we find the basis for discussing addictions and how they imprison us. Harmless addictions would be like ignoring a pink elephant in your living room, impossible to ignore, while a simple mosquito on your bedroom wall could go unnoticed until you wake up the next day all stung and itchy. Desperately, harmless addictions often operate in the same way. We live with them almost without realizing it, as we often cannot clearly identify them. When we finally notice them, we tend to minimize them, convincing ourselves that they are just harmless distractions. However, just like the silent mosquito that attacks us at night, these addictions can prove harmful when we least expect it. This is a powerful lesson about how we should be aware of the vices that lurk in our lives, even if they seem completely harmless. Examples of these addictions include shopping to relieve stress, watching pornography to get in the mood, complaining about someone at work, criticizing a spouse or family member, procrastinating difficult tasks, choosing fast food instead of a healthy meal, drinking coffee every half hour, spend hours on social media and inevitably compare your life to the perfect lives that are posted. These actions seem simple in our everyday lives and are far from the image of addictions we have in mind or see on TV. However, these habits have the power to silently chain us long before we recognize them as addictions. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, thieves, perverts, murderers, and tyrants gather to inspect our supposed pleasures. Marco Aurelio warns us about the dangerous path that many human beings take when highlighting addictions in their lives. These words resonate as a warning, as vices can be real thieves of virtue and happiness. When we allow fleeting and harmful pleasures to dominate our lives, such as indulging in indulgences or self-destructive behaviors, without realizing it, we are paving a path towards our own moral ruin. Don't allow this trap to swallow you. Start making choices that lead you to success and lasting happiness. The relentless pursuit of momentary pleasures often leads us to destruction. Feeling relieved and happy in life only when you shop, spending money on things that are not necessary, means voluntarily conditioning your happiness on the act of buying. If you use pornography as the only fuel for sexual satisfaction and to feel loved, it will be difficult to establish an emotional connection and build a healthy relationship in the real world, with a real person. If to concentrate you need to consume several cups of coffee throughout the day, you are supporting your productivity on caffeine, even when your mind and body have the intrinsic ability to concentrate and produce. When you indulge in an incessant cycle of criticism and complaints, you end up developing an addiction to this behavior. Consequently, in any environment and situation you find yourself in, your brain will automatically look for reasons to complain or criticize, feeding this destructive pattern. Marcus Aurelius tells us that whenever we are about to find a defect in someone, we should ask ourselves the following: what is my defect that most resembles the one I am about to criticize? Criticism and complaining are some of the most destructive silent vices there are. When you constantly avoid difficult tasks, like studying for an exam or completing a project, in favor of easier, less productive activities, you are diminishing your ability to face life's adversities and demands. The more dependent on fast food you become, the harder it is to change your habits and become a healthy person. If you spend a lot of time on social media, especially comparing your life to others and feeling inadequate, it can negatively affect your self-esteem and mental well-being. This search for validation on social media can become addictive and harmful to mental health. The danger of addictions lies in the fact that they seduce us with fleeting promises of satisfaction, and in doing so, we feel incredibly good for a short period of time. However, in the end, they leave a trail of devastation, eroding the ability to live a virtuous and meaningful life. Pleasure can turn into a punishment. Self-discipline stands out as a powerful tool to combat the addiction trap, guiding us as a determined ally in the fight against these harmful behaviors. It helps us maintain balance and achieve a healthier and more virtuous way of life. According to Marco Aurelio, the source of good is within us, and it can flow continuously if we always dig for it. The journey of self-discipline is challenging, without a shadow of a doubt. However, it is crucial to understand that self-control is intrinsically linked to the ability to resist temptation. When we connect the temptation of addiction with its negative consequences, it loses part of its seductive power. This means recognizing that giving into addictions often brings much worse results than resisting them. Now, think about an addiction you have and try to list the results of always giving into it. Take your cell phone notepad or a piece of paper and divide it into two columns, one for secondary benefits and the other for harmful results. Secondary benefits are like little rewards that addiction offers us. For example, By procrastinating a task, you can gain some free time, receive attention from someone, even if it is to charge you for being late, or even avoid major responsibilities and commitments. Negative results include not reaching your goals, never finishing anything you start, and losing your self-confidence. After completing both columns, you will realize that, although seemingly harmless addictions offer fleeting and momentary rewards, these rewards do not compare to the feeling of accomplishment that could be achieved if you eliminated them. Thinking this way, the very act of controlling yourself becomes a source of satisfaction and fulfillment, while temptation turns into a burden of regret and remorse. Stoicism teaches us to be rational, that is, to exercise reason in a constant battle against vices. It leads us to resist before we respond impulsively and react with compulsive behavior to anything that happens to us. We can think and decide our actions, and the Stoics refer to this ability as dominant capacity because it allows us to evaluate our thoughts, feelings, and impulses, discerning between those that are good and bad, healthy and unhealthy. Acting based on this assessment elevates us to the status of rational beings, capable of making conscious and wise choices, breaking the chains of addictions and automatic responses. Being trapped by addictions is not easy. But remember that stronger than any trigger is your ability to think. Remember that it is impossible for anything to happen without your consent. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, "Today I escaped difficult circumstances, or better said, I rejected them, for they were not found outside of me, but in my own assumptions." No event or circumstance in itself has the power to govern our lives without our permission. All the situations you face in life are external and have no access to your mind. This quote from Marcus Aurelius is a reminder that we are the masters of our choices and reactions. The practice of Stoicism teaches us to identify what is within our control and what is not within our control. First, we need to know how to differentiate what is under our control and what is not under our control. Second, we take responsibility for what we can control: your will, your intentions, your actions, and how you react to what happens to you are under your control. You have the freedom and control to reject any environment and situations that lead you to fall into addiction. For example, if you decide to stop smoking and want to end your nicotine addiction, you cannot demand that other people stop smoking. This is not under your control. But you can reject going to an environment where everyone smokes all the time so as not to give in to temptation. This is under your control. You have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this and you will find strength. There comes a time when it is necessary to remove yourself from environments, situations, and even friendships that insist on pushing you down. Either you leave it aside, or you will remain connected to these situations, always stuck with your addictions. Stick to what's in front of you: idea, action, expression. Marcus Aurelius states that by understanding this, we can reject the influence of external assumptions, resist the temptations of addictions, and take control of our own lives. Understanding the dichotomy of control is relatively simple, but its practice in everyday life can be challenging and complicated. Therefore, if you give in to temptation, make a small mistake or even make a big mistake, understand that this does not change and compromises the philosophy you know. This doesn't mean that your ability to make rational choices is gone forever. On the contrary, it was you who temporarily forgot about it. Returning to old vices, keep in mind that the tools and objectives for change are not shaken by the turbulence of the moment. Take a break, regain control over yourself. He is waiting for you. In the words of Epictetus, the soul is like a bowl of water, and our impressions are like the ray of light that falls on it. When the water is stirred, it appears as if the light itself is also moving, but it is not. Thus, when a person loses self-control, it is not his abilities and virtues that are disturbed, but the spirit in which they exist. And when the spirit calms down, these things also calm down. It's important to admit when we make a mistake or fail to give up our addictions. However, even more important is to lift your head and move forward. We cannot wallow in guilt, as guilt and remorse can easily become a mental trap, an internal prison that prevents us from moving forward. For example, when you break your diet or end up eating too much and spend hours regretting your mistake, don't make guilt and remorse your new cycle of addiction. This is not self-deception, it is not pretending that the failure did not happen, but rather assuming that it happened, thinking and reflecting on what environment led you to fail and why you gave in once again, and then taking responsibility and moving forward, like Marco Aurelio teaches us. Come to your senses, turn yourself back on and once again wake up. Now that you have realized that only dreams bothered you, see this reality as you see your dreams, deep addictions. Giving up addictions, whether harmless or profound, is difficult and takes a long journey. If you've been smoking for 15 years, don't expect to give up smoking on a certain day when you wake up. Unfortunately, just determination alone, without strategy, without planning and attitudes, will not bring results. Nothing is created suddenly. Using Epictetus' words, calculate the time you maintain this addiction in days. For example, if you have been smoking for 15 years, that is 5,475 days of maintaining an addiction. This habit is already completely ingrained. Therefore, do not be fooled into believing that just one statement in front of the mirror will make you stop and never fall into temptation again. Commit, but start taking action. Start by mapping your addictions, observing what you do before practicing. For example, in the case of cigarettes, you usually smoke after lunch. You've already identified that your trigger is finishing lunch. So, change your activity, go for a walk, some kind of quick exercise, anything that breaks this habit pattern. By mapping your habits, you will have in your hands the triggers that precede and follow your addictions. This way, it will be easier to avoid them, creating a new routine that breaks your self-destructive pattern. Of course, there are deeper addictions, like illicit drugs, for example, and unfortunately, this video does not have the power to make you stop using them. That's up to you alone. Man's happiness depends on himself, as Marcus Aurelius said. It's easy to confuse our image with our weaknesses, but we are not our vices. Stoicism encourages us to live in pursuit of virtue and be present to live our lives with dignity. When we give up and accept addiction, we not only lose, but we stop winning. We fail to gain self-respect, a family, money, and live in better financial conditions. We stop showing the world our gifts and talents. As a last reflection on how to be greater than our vices, I want to leave these words: enough of this miserable, whining life. Stop playing around. Why are you worried? What's new here? What's so disconcerting? The cause, take a good look at it, or is it the question itself? So look at it, there is nothing more to see. However, towards the gods now, it makes you more direct and kind. It is the same whether you have examined these things for 100 years, or just for 3. Marco Aurelio, in the book Meditators, wrote, "Character is the willingness to accept responsibility for one's life, it is the source from which self-love springs." Marco is urging us not to waste time complaining about what we don't understand or the way things happen. We have to stop playing around and be in charge of our lives. Character can be developed, and when it is, the result is self-respect. But that means starting and taking these things seriously, not later, not after you get your head together or your life together, but now, while you're living. Taking responsibility is the first step. Being omitted and devoid of this character is the worst of all fates. To live without self-love is to spend your life giving in to all desires, adding sins by action or omission, betrayals of trust and all subtly broken promises, gifts irrevocably wasted through laziness, cowardice or carelessness. You are better than that, and if you like this video, be sure to share it with a friend who needs it. Thanks for watching.